So one thing that makes games interesting and more challenging is if you end up having a certain number of lives. So one thing we can do is change, get rid of that, so I can show you how I got it. So one thing you could do is figure out, let's say there's 3 lives, and once you're done with 3 lives, then something happens. Maybe the game is over, maybe you go to another level. A lot of different things could happen. So how do we make a certain number of lives? Well, that sounds like a variable. So let's make a variable. So that's how to delete a variable, just so I can show you how to make it. So we're going to make a variable called lives for all sprites, and then it will show your score and your lives up in the corner. At the beginning of the game, so this is up above the forever loop, we're going to set the score to 0, but do we want to set lives to 0? No. Let's say 3. We'll give the player 3 lives to begin with. And then, this is the game going through the forever loop. So we have, if it's touching the paddle, this happens. If it's touching the edge, this happens. How do we take away a life? Well, one way I've done it in the past is make a line that represents a boundary. So we're going to make a new sprite. It's a very, very simple sprite. I'm going to call this sprite the oops line. So you missed the paddle, so oops. Okay, this is going to be a very simple sprite that's basically a straight black line. So you can make it as thick as you want. You can make it any color you want. I'm just going to do it as a black line. So if you want lines to be straight up and down, one thing that helps is you hold the shift key, and then we'll just make a really long straight line that basically goes the whole length of the screen. And there it goes, it appears. So go back to scripts, and then let's move this to where you want it. In this case, you want it right back here. You want it so that if the ball goes past the paddle, it's definitely going to hit the oops line. So then we have to look at what's going to happen if it does hit the oops line. So if touching edge, now we'll make an if that says if touching the oops line. So if, we'll bring it in here. No, we don't want the if on edge bounds. We'll keep that outside. If sensing, if the ball is touching the oops line, so this lets you pick a sprite, touching the oops line, then what should we do? Well, then let's reduce your lives by 1. But wait, this is change. So if you hit the oops line, you want your lives to go up by 1? No. So we're going to change this to a negative number. Change it by -1, goes down. And the other thing is maybe the ball should start back at the starting position and let you go again. So what we're going to do is copy these 2 blocks right here if it hits the oops line. So go to 0, 0 and point in direction 90. So those are motion blocks. So let's go to 0, tab 0, and point in direction 90, just like in the beginning. So now if you play, let's see what happens. Yeah, so my score is going up. My lives, I still have all those good lives, and boom. Okay, so I hit the oops line, now I'm down to 2 lives. Goes back and forth. Maybe we'll fix that and add some randomness to the bounces off the wall later, because otherwise it ends up going like that. But that's a challenge. Can you add some randomness using like this to include down here where it's touching the edge? You could probably just make a copy of this block, duplicate it, and then pull it down into this edge loop. And then you can get some randomness hitting the sides as well. So that's how to use lives. If you keep playing though, your lives will go down and down and down, and you'll end up with negative lives, -1 life, -2 life. Should the game keep going if you have negative lives? What can you do if the game gets to 0 lives? It should stop, and you should get a game over. We'll talk about that in the next step.